So we're gonna change tack a little bit here. We're talking about evaluating creativity, and I'm coming at this from a funder's perspective. And so I really want to talk to you, not in an academic way, but in a way that is kind of a practical on the ground. How do we evaluate? How do we know what it is that we're supporting and what we should continue to support? I was reading this book called Creative Confidence by David and Tom Kelly, and there was a line that jumped out at me that says, with a belief in your own creative capacity, you feel empowered to take action, to become an agent for change in your environment, at work, at home, or in the world at large. And that just seems to echo with a lot of what I've been hearing this morning so far, and with my own personal creativity context, which I want to start with briefly. I grew up in a small town of 2,000 people in the middle of Wisconsin, surrounded by cranberry bogs and paper mills. So we were a place that was a center of agricultural and manufacturing activity. My mom was a third grade teacher. She might be watching. Hi, Mom. And throughout my K through 12 education, I had art teachers and music teachers. I had band and chorus and everything in between. But we didn't call it arts education back then. We just called it going to school. And I think about the students in that small town, many of them who then after high school went to work at that mill or in the cranberry bogs, and how they took the creativity that they had gotten just by going to school with them into their jobs and into that town. I'll never forget the things that I learned through my arts instruction, and I would guess that they didn't either. It was just part of the fabric of their lives. And interestingly, my two kids in college, products of school in California and in England, are artists. My son's a musician. My daughter is studying graphic design. So I've gotten the chance to consider firsthand how to evaluate creativity in classrooms with my own little family petri dish. And that's as scientific as I'm going to get. So now let me give you the... Right, exactly. Not done yet. So now let me give you the Hewlett Foundation context. Over the past couple of years, the Performing Arts program at Hewlett completed a strategic review. In that framework, arts education is now one of our three main components, stating as a goal, California students have equitable access to multidisciplinary arts education opportunities. We want every one of the 6.3 million K through 12 public school children in California to get sequential, standards-based arts education and an overall quality education that includes learning in and through the arts. We want, and that's kind of our primary education metric. We want it to be every one of those kids. And we want the arts to be part of the deeper learning that's critical to our children. We recognize the importance of the arts for young people in a variety of ways. And we know, as you all know, that arts education fosters problem solving, creative thinking, and innovation, helps kids learn better and be more engaged in school, and what we think is particularly important, creates future artists and audiences and donors to the arts. Over the past 6 years, our arts education portfolio, which makes up about 25% of our annual program budget, has both broadened and deepened in collaboration with Hewlett's education program. We think that supporting policy and advocacy, direct program delivery, and pre-professional conservatory arts instruction provides a strong foundation for increased access. There's a democratization that occurs when children are able to engage in the arts in an educational setting, in school, out of school, and after school. We believe this is an education issue, an opportunity to improve the quality of children's learning experiences, and not solely about the arts. Back in 2006, at the beginning of our arts education exploration, we commissioned some research, our unfinished canvas study from SRI, and it painted a devastating picture of the provision of arts education, or really the lack thereof, in the state's public schools. In general, a baseline for evaluation and subsequent funding decisions for us. We followed up that initial report with a further 5 reports on policy levers affecting arts education, such as teacher professional development, instructional time, partnerships, funding, and district capacity, which gave us more information on the chasm in equity and access in arts education for provision. For example, and you probably know all this, 89% of California schools fail to provide standards-based instruction in music, dance, theater, and visual arts. And elementary school students in particular are deprived of opportunities to engage in the arts. Students attending high-poverty schools have less access to arts instruction than their peers in more affluent communities. 61% of schools do not have even one full-time equivalent art specialist teacher. And California public school students spend 2 hours less per week of instructional time in the classroom compared to the national average, meaning less time for all subjects, including the arts. The research provided data for what we knew anecdotally. The fallout from Prop 13 is decimated education funding, and therefore money available for arts teachers and classes is greatly eroded over the years. And that's why we've crafted our portfolio to include policy and advocacy grantees at the federal, state, and local level, understanding that systemic change is one of the main ways that we're going to be able to reach all those kids, as well as program delivery grantees. So the evaluation question for us and for other funders is this: how do we know that creativity-based programs are effective? How do we know what to support? How do we know when to say no or no more? Those exit grants are tough, let me tell you. And this is something that the field of philanthropy has grappled in with many different ways over the years. In fact, at the 2011 Grantmakers in the Arts Conference, we devoted a whole afternoon in a windowless room, I should say, to a session called, quite simply, How do we know a good arts education program when we see it? As funders, we generally rely upon our grantees and their reports and our conversations with them to track their own metrics and report to us, but we need to augment that with our own observation and feedback loops. So there are a number of tactics that we use. None of them rocket science. Oh, I mentioned science again. But over time, they do build up a sense of understanding and lead us to the next level of questions to ask, which is really our chief role, I think, and help us make decisions on what grants to recommend to our board. This is true for both our policy and advocacy grantees and our program delivery. So firstly, we prioritize making classroom visits, because frankly, nothing is more fun or inspirational or more instructive than being in the presence of the students in a learning environment. We look at how the school and classroom environment help learning. We talk to classroom teachers and other school leaders if possible. We observe teaching artists in action and how engaged or disengaged students are, which reminds me of a class visit that I made a couple of years ago where the teacher was so angry. She spent the whole class time trying to control her kids, so the teaching artist had no opportunity to engage the students. And so what I learned from that is, one site visit is not going to show me what's really going on. And so it is actually that ongoing repetition of going and seeing what's going on in class. Two of our grantees, Envision Education and the Alameda County Office of Education, have been developing a performance assessment network to increase the acceptance and implementation of performance assessment in the Bay Area. And so it's been important to see both the professional development and student presentations that come out of that in that model. Secondly, we look for opportunities to support the development of accountability systems and assessment. A couple of years ago, we made a multi-year grant to CORE, that coalition of the 10 districts in California that are working together, to ensure that the arts are at the Common Core design table in curriculum, teacher professional development, and assessments. And that work is helping us to better understand where future investment might be more helpful. Thirdly, we hold policy and advocacy grantee cohort convenings to better collaborate for impact. And I have to say, there's a bunch of our grantees in this room that were at that meeting that we had last week. Because it's really important, and we do this 1 or 2 times a year, to bring those policy grantees together to figure out what can we do better together. And to be honest, they're asking each other that question all the time. And we see a number of collaborations and partnerships across all of those grantees. And what we developed last week was really an asset map of what everybody is doing and an action plan as to how we can move forward. So it's a good use of our time in terms of evaluating what they're doing. And number 4, we attend conference presentations by grantees that confirms the reach and impact of their work, which is kind of like being the groupie of a rock band, to be honest, but I'm a rock chick, so that's okay. 2 of our grantees, the California Alliance for Arts Education and Arts for LA, have been leading an effort to ensure that the arts can help advance the goals of Title I federal funding, intended to improve educational outcomes for the country's most disadvantaged and low-income students. And in California, the 2 organizations have been working with the California Department of Education to make sure that those throughout the education system understand that Title I dollars can be used for the arts, essentially clarifying state policy in relation to federal policy, which they've been able to publicly have confirmed by the Federal Department of Education. It's a big win. Those organizations have been able to talk about this at a number of education conferences: Grantmakers for Education, the California School Boards Association, the Federal Title I Conference, to name a few. And in each case, people in the audience ask different questions and raise new challenges, which is also really useful for me as the funder to hear what the concerns are out there. And number 5, we support strategic formal program evaluation. In 2008, 2 of our largest arts education grants, to the California Alliance for Arts Education and to CSESA, the California County Superintendent's Educational Services Association, were up for renewal. At that point, we needed help in assessing the impact of their statewide efforts, since a lot of it was beyond our immediate reach. So we hired an evaluation consulting firm and embarked upon a process using an external review team. This was made up of knowledgeable people who have worked deeply in the field and know the details and impact that the evaluators couldn't know, and also provided multiple points of view. And the findings from that helped us to both refine our own logic model, but also to make grant renewal decisions. And the key evaluation questions that we were asking through that project, which again runs through all of our questions with our grantees, is what has been the impact of your work? What strategies are most effective and what are least effective? What has to come off the table? Is the theory of change accurate? Do you have the capacity to carry out the work? And sometimes the answer can be no. And is there a plan for sustainability? And number 6, we do regular check-ins with other arts education funders and leaders. At the local level, we're part of the Pooled Fund for the Arts for All model, comprehensive arts education program here in Los Angeles. The quarterly meetings of the funders around the table is an opportunity to educate ourselves, but also share our evaluation and reporting techniques and grantee lists with each other. Let us see who's supporting what and where the gaps might be. And in the Bay Area, a group of arts education funders also meets regularly as a learning circle to accomplish those same goals. At the state level, we've participated in the Create California convenings and are supporting a statewide strategic planning effort. And those ongoing planning discussions, on top of the convenings that have been taking place for the last couple of years, have been an excellent way to ask questions about a wide variety of arts education efforts. The better we understand it and understand the ecosystem, the better role we can play in it. And at the national level, we support the Grantmakers in the Arts Education Funders Coalition, a collaboration of over 100 funders throughout the country, who are advocating for the inclusion of arts language in existing legislation, the Elementary and Secondary Education Act. And the coalition has recently been able to get major arts elements into both Senate and House bills at the committee level on reauthorization of No Child Left Behind. And there's been some similar success with recent pre-K proposals by legislatures. And the steering committee of this coalition meets twice a month. And again, we're constantly in evaluation mode of the work that we're doing with that. So as you know, this is a complex system with a lot of moving parts. And in order to ensure that California students have the arts in school, it takes federal, state, and local policy, as well as programs on the ground. It's a long game. We understand that. We need to stay in play. And we need to keep our observation and feedback loops actively helping us to support creativity. So I know there are other funders in the room, but also I'm very interested to hear any other thoughts on how, in our role as funders, which is a very unique position, we can make sure that we're supporting the best possible efforts that we all want to see happen. So thank you.